I always knew something was about to change the night I decided to walk home instead of calling a cab. There was a restlessness in me, the kind that makes your chest feel too small for your own thoughts. Maybe it was the late hour, maybe it was the faint buzz of alcohol still lingering from the bar, or maybe it was just that I couldn't stop thinking about him, about Daniel. I shoved my hands deeper into my jacket pockets, the cool air biting my face, and told myself I was being ridiculous. Daniel was my best friend. He had been for years, ever since that summer we both got stuck in the same volunteer shift at the community center. Me awkward and trying too hard to seem useful, and him, effortlessly charming, turning even the most boring tasks into something fun. He'd always had that effect on me, making me laugh when I didn't want to, steadying me when I felt scattered, unknowingly tugging me closer without ever really noticing. At least I thought he didn't notice. Tonight had been one of those nights where our little group met up for drinks. Nothing unusual, except Daniel had sat next to me at the booth, our knees brushing under the table more times than coincidence would allow. Every time his arm stretched across the back of the seat, I felt like my heart was leaning dangerously close to betraying me. He had no idea what he was doing to me, I told myself. He couldn't. The streets were mostly empty now, just the echo of my footsteps bouncing off brick walls and shuttered storefronts. I tried to focus on the quiet, on the rhythm of walking, but my head kept replaying the small things. The way Daniel had laughed when I mispronounced the name of that new IPA, how he'd leaned in close to explain the rules of some ridiculous bar game, his hand brushing mine when he slid me his fries without asking if I wanted any. It was nothing. It was everything. I shook my head, scolding myself, when headlights cut through the dark. A police cruiser slowed as it approached, the window rolling down. For a second I froze, half guilty, half annoyed. Then a familiar voice spilled out into the night. "Hey idiot. What the hell are you doing walking home at midnight?" It was Daniel. Uniform crisp, badge glinting under the street light, the corners of his mouth pulled into that crooked smile that always left me undone. And just like that, I knew this night wasn't going to end the way I'd expected. Daniel and I had been friends for so long that I sometimes forgot how it all began. But then, in quieter moments like this, I'd catch myself remembering him showing up to the community center with a box of donated books balanced in his arms, his grin too wide for the occasion, and me standing awkwardly with a clipboard, trying not to look like I had no idea what I was doing. He'd made it easy back then. He always did. Daniel had a way of disarming people, of making even the most ordinary afternoons feel like a story worth retelling. For me, he'd become more than a friend before I even had the courage to admit it. "Seriously though," he said now, pulling the cruiser to the curb. "Walking home at this hour? Are you trying to audition for a true crime documentary?" I rolled my eyes but couldn't help the smile tugging at my lips. "Relax, officer. I was perfectly fine until you pulled up looking like you escaped from a recruitment poster." He smirked. "You mean handsome, heroic, and ready to save your reckless ass?" "More like smug, cocky, and desperate for attention," I shot back. The banter was easy, too easy. With anyone else, I'd second-guess myself, worry about saying the wrong thing. With him, it felt like breathing. He leaned over, pushed the passenger door open, and tilted his head. "Get in. Before I actually start writing you up for being an idiot." The warmth of the cruiser was immediate when I slid inside. I tried not to notice how his cologne clung to the air, subtle but maddening, or how close his arm rested to mine when he shifted gears. My pulse always betrayed me in these moments, quickening like it wanted to give me away. "You know," he said casually, eyes on the road, "you're lucky I was on patrol tonight. Another cop might have thought you were suspicious. Midnight wanderer, dark hoodie, definitely up to no good." "Please?" I snorted. "I'd have talked my way out of it. I've got a trustworthy face." He gave me a side glance, lips twitching. "That's debatable. But fine, maybe you'd get away with it." The way he looked at me lingered longer than it should have. I shifted in my seat, heat rising in my chest, and quickly broke eye contact. This wasn't unusual for us. Moments where the air seemed to thicken, where I wasn't sure if I was imagining the way his gaze softened or the way silence stretched between us. And every time I told myself it was nothing. That Daniel was just like this, tactile, warm, unafraid of closeness. I'd seen him sling an arm over his co-workers, ruffle a kid's hair at the community center, laugh too loudly at someone else's joke. It was just who he was, right? Still, he treated me differently. Or maybe I only wanted to believe that. I thought about all the nights like this one, long drives where he insisted on dropping me home, camping trips where he accidentally packed one less sleeping bag so we had to share, afternoons where we ended up stuck in sudden downpours, sprinting through the streets, soaked and breathless with laughter. Each time I'd felt something shift. Each time I'd ignored it. Now, sitting beside him in the quiet hum of the cruiser, I couldn't ignore the small complication of tonight. He wasn't just Daniel, my friend. He was Daniel in uniform, Daniel with authority, Daniel pulling me in closer than usual just by being here when I wasn't expecting him. And maybe it was the lateness of the hour, or the way the world outside blurred into dark streaks through the window, but I couldn't stop thinking about how easily this night could change everything. Daniel didn't drive me straight home. I realized it a few blocks in, when the familiar turn toward my street slipped past and the cruiser kept rolling forward. I frowned, twisting in my seat. Unless you're secretly kidnapping me, that wasn't the way to my place. He grinned without looking at me. Relax. There's a detour. A tree went down earlier, blocked the road near your street. I'll get you there, just the long way. Of course. Leave it to Daniel to make even something as mundane as roadwork sound like an adventure. But the further we went, the narrower the streets became until finally, almost predictably, the cruiser slowed and then came to a full stop. A giant delivery truck was stuck across the intersection, hazard lights blinking, a couple of men standing beside it, arguing in low voices. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. Great. Completely blocked. And no way around for a while. I raised a brow. So what now? We just camp out in the squad car until morning? His lips curved. Guess so. Good thing you've got me for company. The words were teasing, light, but they landed heavy in my chest. Trapped. With him. In the dark, in this tiny bubble of warmth, with nowhere else to look but at each other. My heart thudded in response, betraying the calm front I tried to maintain. Daniel shifted in his seat, stretching one arm along the back of mine. Casual. Careless. Except his knuckles brushed the edge of my shoulder and stayed there, not quite touching, not quite pulling away. It was nothing, except it wasn't. You good? He asked after a moment, his voice softer now, the edge of humor giving way to something quieter. Yeah, I said quickly, though my throat felt dry. Yeah. Just tired. He nodded, leaning back, eyes catching mine in the glow of the dashboard lights. There was something in the way he looked at me that made the air feel too heavy to breathe, something unspoken that lingered there between us. I broke first, tearing my gaze away to the windshield, pretending to study the blinking hazards of the stranded truck. But I could feel him. His presence, his warmth, the weight of his eyes. Minutes stretched. The radio crackled faintly with distant chatter, but otherwise, it was just the two of us in the hush of the cruiser. The silence pressed in around us, intimate and dangerous. I tried to steady my thoughts, but they betrayed me, flashing to every time his hand had brushed mine, every laugh shared too closely, every night like this where I wondered if he knew. I told myself to stop, to breathe, to remember he was my best friend. That risking this would ruin everything. And then he shifted closer. Not much, just enough that our knees touched in the cramped space, his thigh warm against mine. He didn't move away. I froze. My pulse jumped. My chest burned with everything I wanted to say but couldn't. Hey, he said softly, tilting his head toward me, his voice low in a way that pulled at something deep inside me. You're quiet. I forced a laugh. For once. Don't get used to it. He smirked, but his hand, resting on the back of my seat, slid down slightly, fingertips grazing the edge of my shoulder. My whole body went tense at the contact. Did he even realize what he was doing to me? Probably not. He was always like this, playful, tactile, too close. And yet, I shifted, meaning to lean away, but instead I found myself turning toward him. Our faces were closer than they'd ever been, the air charged between us. I could see the flecks of green in his hazel eyes, the faint scar on his jaw he always tried to hide with stubble. I could smell his cologne, warm and clean, mixed with something distinctly him. Every instinct screamed at me to pull back. But my heart, it wanted to stay right there. Daniel, I started, the word breaking before I could finish. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing just slightly, like he was searching for something in me. His hand lingered on my shoulder, thumb brushing once, absently, like it belonged there. And for a second, just a second, I thought maybe he felt it too. But then he leaned back suddenly, clearing his throat, breaking the spell. We'll probably be here a while, he said briskly, glancing back at the road. Might as well get comfortable. The air felt colder without his touch. I leaned against the door, trying to steady my breathing, my thoughts a mess of want and fear. Because for all the closeness, for all the touches and glances, I still didn't know if crossing that line would mean everything, or ruin the only thing that mattered. And as the minutes ticked by in the trapped cruiser, I realized that was the real conflict. Not the blocked road, not the detour, but the question that had been building between us for years. What if he wanted more too? Time felt strange in that cruiser. Minutes slipped into each other, stretching, folding, and dragging all at once. The stranded truck outside didn't budge, its hazard lights blinking like a metronome, keeping time with the pounding in my chest. I kept my gaze forward, fighting the urge to look at him again, afraid of what I'd find if I did. My head told me to stay quiet, to let the moment pass, but my heart, loud, insistent, kept replaying the way his thumb had brushed against my shoulder, the way his voice had dropped softer, almost tender. Finally, he broke the silence. "You're doing it again." I blinked, startled. "Doing what?" "Overthinking. I can hear it." His lips curved, though not quite into a smile. "It's like you get lost somewhere inside your head and forget you're here with me." I laughed, too sharp, too defensive. "Yeah, well, somebody's got to keep us grounded." Daniel turned then, fully, his body angled toward me. His arm rested on the console between us, but his eyes, that steady hazel that had always undone me, held me in place. "What's going on with you tonight?" The question was casual enough, but something in the way he asked it made it impossible to dodge. His voice wasn't teasing. It was careful. Like he already knew the answer and was just waiting for me to trust him with it. My throat tightened. I could feel the words clawing their way up, desperate to be freed, but fear strangled them back. What if I said it and he laughed? What if I ruined everything? "Nothing," I lied weakly, looking away. His hand came down on my arm, firm, grounding, warm. "Don't give me that. I know you better than that." And that was it, the unraveling thread. Because he did know me better than anyone. He always had. And maybe that was why the lie tasted so bitter in my mouth. I swallowed hard, the words trembling just behind my lips. I don't want to ruin this." He frowned. "Ruin what?" "This." I gestured helplessly between us, my voice cracking. "Our friendship. Everything." For a moment, silence. I risked a glance at him and saw his expression soften, confusion giving way to something else, something I couldn't name yet. "Why would you ruin it?" he asked gently. "Because," my chest burned, my voice raw. "Because I feel things I shouldn't. Because I can't sit here next to you in this stupid car, pretending like I don't notice every time you touch me or laugh at something I say or look at me too long. I can't keep pretending it's just friendship when it's more than that for me." The words tumbled out, messy and uneven, but once they started I couldn't stop. I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was that camping trip, when you insisted we share a sleeping bag because you forgot yours. Or maybe it was that time we ran through the rain like idiots and you wouldn't stop laughing, and I realized I'd never heard anything more perfect. Or maybe it's just always been there and I've been too scared to admit it. But my voice broke and I pressed my palms to my face, unable to look at him. "God, I like you, Daniel. More than I should. And I've been terrified to say it." The silence that followed was unbearable. Heavy. Endless. I kept my hands over my face, waiting for him to laugh, to tell me I was imagining things, to pull away. My chest ached with every second that passed, the weight of my confession pressing down harder than I'd anticipated. Then warmth. Fingers gently prying mine away from my face. His touch, careful, deliberate. "Look at me," he said softly. I hesitated, but when I finally lifted my eyes, his expression nearly unraveled me all over again. No laughter. No rejection. Just something raw. Something that mirrored my own fear, my own longing. "You think you've been hiding this?" His lips twitched into a small, incredulous smile. I've known for a long time." My breath caught. "You, what?" "Of course I knew," he said, almost laughing, though his voice shook slightly. "You're not as subtle as you think. The way you look at me. I'd have to be blind not to notice." Shame flooded me hot and sharp. "So what, you've just been humoring me all this time?" "No." His hand tightened on mine, grounding me again. "I've been waiting." I froze. "Waiting?" "For you to say it first." My heart lurched, slamming against my ribs. "Daniel?" His eyes softened, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "You're not the only one who's been scared. I didn't want to risk losing you either. But every time we got stuck together, every rainstorm, every late-night drive, every stupid inside joke, I wanted to believe maybe you felt it too." My chest felt like it might burst. "So, what does this mean?" He gave a small, nervous laugh. "It means, I like you too, idiot. Probably more than I should. Definitely more than I've admitted, even to myself." For a long moment we just sat there, our hands tangled, the air heavy with everything we'd finally let out. My heart raced, torn between relief and disbelief, joy and fear. "Say something," he murmured, his voice trembling now. "Because I'm freaking out a little." The honesty in his tone broke the last of my restraint. I leaned in before I could second-guess myself, closing the distance between us until I could feel his breath against mine. My voice was barely more than a whisper. "I'm done pretending." And then I kissed him. It wasn't perfect, hesitant, trembling, more a question than a declaration. But the moment his lips pressed back against mine, sure and steady, I knew the answer. His free hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and every fear, every hesitation, melted away in the warmth of him. When we finally broke apart, breathless, foreheads resting together, he chuckled softly. "About time." I laughed, shaking my head. "You're insufferable." "Maybe," he murmured, brushing his thumb across my cheek. "But now you're stuck with me." And for the first time in years, the thought didn't terrify me. It thrilled me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. My forehead rested against his, breaths mingling, the cruiser suddenly too small to contain everything pulsing between us. My lips still tingled, my chest still ached, but for once, it wasn't from holding everything in, it was from letting it out. Daniel's hand stayed at the back of my neck, thumb tracing lazy circles against my skin. "So," he whispered, his voice low and a little shaky, "do I get to gloat that I was right? That you like me?" I groaned, half laughing, half exasperated, and dropped my head against his shoulder. "You really can't let me have a vulnerable moment, can you?" "Not a chance," he teased, pressing a quick kiss to my temple, casual, easy, like he'd been doing it forever. "I've been waiting years for this material. I'm not wasting it." I swatted his chest lightly, but I couldn't stop smiling. Everything between us suddenly felt looser, freer, like we'd both been holding our breath and finally exhaled. The fear was still there, yes, but it no longer drowned me, it sat quietly, outweighed by something warmer. We sat there in the soft hum of the cruiser, our shoulders pressed together, hands tangled on the console. For the first time, I let myself study him without guilt. The curve of his jaw, the way his lashes dipped when he looked down at our joined hands, the faint dimples that appeared when he smirked. I'd noticed it all before, of course, but now I didn't have to hide it. "You know," he said after a while, voice thoughtful, "we should probably talk about what this means." "Right?" I said, heart thudding again. "Because you're a cop and I'm an idiot who walks home at midnight," he cut in, grinning. I rolled my eyes, but the tension broke again with laughter. "I was going to say your best friend." His smile softened. "Still my best friend. Just more now." The weight of that word, more, settled in my chest, not heavy but grounding. "You're sure?" I asked quietly. "Because this could change everything." He turned, serious now, his hand tightening around mine. "I know. And yeah, it's scary. But I'd rather risk everything than keep pretending." "Wouldn't you?" I swallowed, nodding. "Yeah, I would." That seemed to be enough for both of us. The fear was still there, lingering at the edges, but it felt manageable now, softened by the certainty in his voice. After a moment, he leaned back, a grin tugging at his lips again. "So, hypothetically, if I wanted to kiss you again right now, would you report me for misconduct?" I laughed, heat flooding my cheeks. "Pretty sure you're abusing your authority already." "Good thing you like it," he murmured, leaning in until his lips brushed mine again, this time slower, deeper, no hesitation. The kiss was everything the first one hadn't been, assured, hungry, full of promise. My hand slid into his hair, pulling him closer, and when we finally broke apart, both of us were breathless and grinning like idiots. "Okay," I said, still catching my breath. "But seriously, what happens next? With us, I mean." He tilted his head, pretending to think. "Well, first I'm going to drop you off at home because I'm still technically on duty and you're distracting as hell." "Sorry?" I said, smirking. "You're not sorry at all," he shot back, smirking right back. "True." He laughed, shaking his head, then his expression softened again. "And after that? We figure it out. Together. I don't care how complicated it gets. I just want this. I want you." The words landed with a weight that made my chest ache, in the best way. I squeezed his hand, unable to stop the smile spreading across my face. "Yeah," I said softly. "Me too." The truck blocking the road finally groaned to life, headlights shifting as it moved. But for me, the world had already shifted. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't just his best friend, silently aching beside him. I was something more. And whatever came next, I wasn't afraid anymore. Not with him sitting right there, his hand still in mine, and the promise of tomorrow stretched out before us. The road finally cleared, but neither of us seemed in a rush to move. Daniel drummed his fingers lightly against the wheel, like he was stalling on purpose, while I leaned back in the seat, his hand still loosely laced with mine. It was such a small thing, but it felt enormous. the kind of shift that turned the ordinary into something sacred. When he finally started the engine, I couldn't help laughing softly. So, is this where you tell me I'm under arrest? He shot me a sidelong grin. Only if the charge is stealing my heart. I groaned, shoving his arm. That was awful. Awful but effective, he said smugly, squeezing my hand before pulling onto the street. The drive to my place was quiet, but not in the way it used to be. The silence between us was full, warm, alive. Every brush of his thumb against my knuckles reminded me this was real, that I'd said the words, that he'd said them back, that everything between us had changed in the span of one impossible night. When he pulled up to my apartment building, the glow of the streetlight made the cruiser's interior feel softer, more private. He didn't let go of my hand even when he shifted the car into park. Well, I said, staring at our joined fingers. This is the part where I'd normally say goodnight and pretend I wasn't wishing for more. He tilted his head, eyes catching mine. And tonight? Tonight, I said quietly, I don't have to pretend. For a beat, neither of us moved. Then he leaned across the console and kissed me again, slow, unhurried, like he was memorizing the shape of this new beginning. When we finally pulled back, I laughed nervously, brushing my hair from my face. This feels surreal. Like I'll wake up tomorrow and it'll all vanish. He frowned, tugging gently at my hand until I met his eyes again. It's not going to vanish. Not unless you want it to. I don't, I said quickly, the word rushing out before I could temper it. God, I don't. Good, he said softly, smiling in that way that always undid me. Because I'm not going anywhere. I exhaled slowly, the weight in my chest lifting, replaced by something steadier, hope. We sat there for another minute, reluctant to let go, until finally I reached for the door handle. Guess I should go inside before your radio starts blaring and someone yells at you for being late. He chuckled. Perks of the job. I can say I was doing community service. Oh yeah, I teased. What exactly does kissing your best friend count as? Public safety, he said without missing a beat. Making sure you don't wander the streets unsupervised again. I laughed, shaking my head, but the words stuck with me as I stepped out of the car. He rolled down the passenger window and called after me, "Hey." I turned back, half in the glow of the street lamp, half in shadow. Tomorrow, he said, voice firm but soft. Let's talk. Really talk. About us. About what we want. Something in the way he said it, the promise, the certainty, made my chest ache all over again. I nodded, a smile tugging at my lips. Yeah, tomorrow. I lingered at the curb, watching as he pulled away, the cruiser's taillights fading into the night. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the familiar pang of longing as he left. Instead, I felt something new, something solid, the quiet thrill of knowing he'd be back, that this was only the beginning. When I finally climbed the steps to my apartment, my hands still tingled from his touch, my lips still burned from his kiss. And for once I didn't wonder what if. I already knew. Tomorrow was ours.